Hi, my name is Ken Asterson. I wrote a microbiome prescription website, and today was a quick video for a person with chronic fatigue syndrome who has a physician who is willing to prescribe antibiotics. And they have looked at and decided to roughly approximate or follow the Cecile Jadin Protocol, one which I personally used with success. Now, Sardine the Jadin Protocol works well, 70 to 90% depending on what study you review. Now, why doesn't it work 100%? It's very simple. The reason is that everybody's microbiome who has chronic fatigue syndrome is different. It hits the typical scenario and performs well, but everybody is different, and if you happen to have an odd combination of bacteria shifts, then it actually may make things worse. And I've had interchange recently with somebody who had that experience. So for that person and for the person whose samples I'm looking at, um, this is how I would to go about to determine which antibiotics or other prescription items is most likely to help. There's the non-prescription items too, which I have there, and the reason is finding a physician willing to prescribe off-label uses of drugs is a challenge, to put it mildly, especially if you're in any type of established system with a fair amount of regulatory control. So here we have the person's samples. He has one which from Giant, and that's the one go. Now, usually go here, and I will look down and say, wait a minute, I'm looking for advanced analysis. It's missing. What? It should be there. Okay, the reason is simple. Up at the top, you will find the level here, and we'll pop it up to intermediate. And now when we go back there, you will see that there are a lot more choices. The reason I have the levels is very simple. Some people are frustrated because there's too much information for their mental cognitive abilities to handle. It's unfamiliar. It suddenly becomes, wait a minute, you're tossing too much information at me. Other people on the other side are deeply invested or are professionals in this area, professional MDs, professional naturopaths, and they like having all the information available. Hence, we have up at the top, we have the ability to set what level you want. The nerd here, which is marked out, blocked off there, usually is for people who really understand things well, and I can toss at them experimental stuff which I'm playing with, which takes some effort to understand what's going on and takes time to invest because it gets complicated. Or the results are okay, it's a interesting approach, hasn't been validated, should be used with caution, etc. So we are going to stay on immediate, and we'll come down here, look at the latest sample, and now we get advanced suggestions. We're over there, and here we have the joys. We have the choices here, and in general, what I'm going to do is go and check the items which usually are not checked. Nutrition, iron, probiotics, sugar, etc. So in other words, I'm going to be selective in what I'm doing. Now, the question is, what do we do for it? I'm going to, for our first crack, go and say, okay, let's go 9%, and we are going to look at chronic fatigue syndrome only. One of many approaches, again, those of you who are intermediate to advanced, we do have several consensus reports. You can run it through half a dozen different ways and then see what is common across the board. So I'm going to just click here, and the suggestions are now there as to what are being suggested, and it's an interesting one. In this case, tetracycline, which is usually recommended in the Jadin Protocol is on a not to do. We have a bunch of things here which are relatively unusual. We have doxycycline. Here we have an interesting thing. The tetracycline, which is both a family name and a specific one, is on the void, but doxycycline is a to do, and we have even more. Now I'm going to go back and take a look at using the count of multiple ranges and change it to no restrictions. And do the same thing. And now we have the list, and we actually end up with a small list here. And we have, interesting, the rifamycin, which is often prescribed for chronic fatigue patients because it has had some success with some people. It's there at the top of the to avoid this, as well as tetracycline. And over here we have some others. The question is, what are the side effects of each of these? Almost all. That is a okay. Lovastatin is a cholesterol lowering drug, so it would be an off-label use. Again, we included both antibiotics and other prescription items. Off-label is the key. So any of these are all things which do. In some cases, the person may have borderline high cholesterol, in which case then it becomes easy to rationalize the prescription of a cholesterol lowering drug on the person. The cholesterol issue is likely caused by microbiome dysfunction. Again, one of the things you can do always here is check to see what is sitting there, and you can see there we have a couple of things too high and most of the things are too low. Okay, now let's go back and do a third way through. And what we're going to do is go high, slightly higher and low, and we'll toss. We won't toss in anything. We'll just go and do a more broad shotgun things. Suggest suggestions in the window, and there we have the new list of everything. Rifamycin, Z-Pak, very commonly prescribed for chronic fatigue syndrome, sitting there. Proton pump inhibitor, another one sitting there. Macrolide, hey, that's Jadin's Protocol. Okay, rifamycin is sitting there. So we have a whole bunch of things, many of which echoes the Jadin Protocol. So, but again, we've done it different ways. You could go with one particular way, or you could go and go back to your 16 samples. And because we have done it multiple ways, we have consensus suggestions. So we can now go and just click View Suggestions, and it will go and list everything here. The ones which have the greatest impact. I see the person probably been playing with it himself, so some of the stuff are non-prescription items. But so we have there, you can sort it here, and we find one of the highest benefits is doxycycline, Zifamax. We have a bacteriophage there, which is usually hard for people to get hold of, but this person is in Europe and may be able to get it relatively easily. Rifamycin, etc. So you have the decreasing benefits, and then of course down the bottom you have the high risk items, things which you probably should have second thoughts about taking. Okay, so that's basically it. It's just showing how you do it. Try different ways. Remember a couple of things. Chronic fatigue syndrome or long COVID also, is a microbiome shift. Doesn't mean the values go extreme. Going extreme is typically what you see when you have a acute infection from Clostridium difficile or Lyme disease or whatever. You have the values going sky high for one bacteria. A shift means a bunch of them are shifted, but not necessarily to extreme values. They shifted enough that in studies that the group which has a condition versus control are on average statistically higher. Doesn't mean they're at the extreme. Hence, taking the 15% extreme is a valid approach to it. And then you have a variety of filtering. So you are open to it, or you in discussion with the MD are open to it. One way is to try several ways, come to a consensus report, and see what dominates out. Chronic fatigue syndrome is this person, and by the literature we have 1, 2 items sitting there which are typically given with the Jadin Protocol. In other words, the microbiome and the Jadin Protocol are in consensus, in agreement, which indicates a fair amount of confidence going ahead with it. You could take a look at some of the other ones which are there. Okay, the phage is real interesting. Sometimes some things which are low. That one is one which looks pretty good. It has a low negative risk and a significant higher risk. Again, to recap the numbers, this is the net estimated value in terms of confidence, not actual impact. Estimated net negative value in terms of confidence. The count here indicates how many times it's just shown up as a to take, and the count here is the number of times it's shown up as to avoid. So in which case we have it showing up 3 times for a take, 0 times for an avoid in the 3 things we've done. Next level down, it's going to be 2 and 1, so it's more iffy, etc. But usually if you get a good sized list up here, then those what you want. Generally you want to have the ideal thing is, I think in this case we only did antibiotics 3 times. If you get 3 here for the number of times which you've done the analysis, it's awesome. And if you can get the negative value being low and the positive value being at the top, it's even more awesome, because you have, no matter how you shuffle the deck, you have good solid candidates. It doesn't guarantee to work, but the odds are greatly in your favor. So I'm going to shut up there and get this up line. Bye bye.